Welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the Going Coastal Vest. This really cute knitted vest is made using a new yarn from Red Heart called Roll With It Tweed. This is a 100% acrylic yarn. It is also a size 4, medium, or worsted weight yarn. It comes in many different colors and it is a lot of fun to use. Along with the yarn, you will need a pair of size 9 circular needles to accommodate the number of stitches you'll be using, some scrap yarns, that way you can hold stitches, a tapestry needle, and a good pair of scissors. Last but certainly not least, you will need the free pattern. A link to the free pattern is in the video description box right below this video, so make sure you go on down there, click the link, and get your pattern. While you're down there, please smash that like button, as my kids say, to let people know you enjoyed this video. Once you have your pattern and your materials, join me back here and we will get started on this really cute vest. The Going Coastal Vest is rated as an intermediate project. All that means is that you should have a good grasp and understanding of how to cast on stitches and how to knit and how to purl. In this video, I will show you how to begin with the border for the project and how to work through the lace stitch pattern. This really is a super simple project, so let's go ahead and get started with the border. To begin this pattern, you want to cast on the number of stitches you need for the size you're going to make. I've gone ahead and cast on just a small swatch here so that we can work through stitches on a smaller sample. I have knit the first 3 rows, so I used a long tail cast on and then I knit the first 3 rows, giving me this nice garter stitch. In row 4, I begin to set up a different stitch on the first 4 stitches and the last 4 stitches. So what I've done here is I added stitch markers to signify, hey Marley, there's something different here. And the first 2 are knits, the second 2 are purls. You knit across to the last 4 stitches, and then you have the first 2 are purls, the last 2 are knits. Okay, so that's row 4. Row 5, when you turn your work, you will purl the first 2, knit the next 2, that's where my marker is, purl across to the last 4 stitches, knit the first 2, purl the next 2. So far, you should understand everything that I've shown you so far on my swatch. When you get to row 6, that's when the pattern changes ever so slightly. Instead of starting with the knit 2 and going to a purl 2, they switch it up on you. You start with the purl 2 and then go to a knit 2. Knit across, and then you would actually, it says to knit to the last 2 stitches and purl 2. But because I have my marker there, it's just a reminder that, hey, these 4 stitches are just different than what the previous 4 are, okay? That's why I added markers. I like markers. They help me remember where I am in a pattern. Once you've done that on row 6 and we turn our work, it's in row 7 that we begin to introduce some lace stitches. So that's where I am right now. So on row 7, we are going to continue on with those first 4 and last 4 stitches being different. I'm going to move this out of the way so it's easier for you to see the stitches I'm going to create. So the first 2 stitches on row 7 are knit. So I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches. Again, I'm just using my straight needles here for the demonstration. You will use circulars for your actual project. After you knit the first 2, you will then purl the next 2. Now I'm going to slip my marker. You don't have to have a marker on yours, but it helps me keep track, just as I've already mentioned. Now that I've slipped my marker, you'll notice in the pattern, this is where it says star, and then it says yarn over, purl 2 together. And then you're going to repeat that all the way across to the last 4 stitches. The star indicates that you are going to repeat from star at that point. So you're going to do a yarn over, purl 2 together, yarn over, purl 2 together, all the way down the row to the last 4 stitches. To do a yarn over, you bring your yarn forward, bring it back to the back over top of your right hand needle, and then bring it back between your needles again. Can you see how that gives a full yarn over my right hand needle? Now I can go ahead and purl 2 together. So I'm going to take my right hand needle, put it into the front leg of those next 2 stitches on my left hand needle, and then purl them together and off. So I have a yarn over and a purl two together. I want to do that again. My yarn is forward. I'm going to bring it up over top of my right hand needle. I could put my finger on it if I want to hold it, and then bring my yarn back between my needles. So it's back to the front. See how I've wrapped my right hand needle, and I will purl two together. I'm going to do this all the way down the row. Because I know some of you have a hard time seeing the yarn in my left hand, I'm going to show you how it looks in the right hand also. So I'm getting ready to do my yarn over. So I bring my yarn in front, over top of my right hand needle, and then back between my needles. Okay, can you see that? And then I will purl two together. My yarn is in front. I'm going to go over top my right hand needle, bring it back between my needles, back to the front, and then purl two together. You see that? And I would do this all the way to the last 4 stitches. Luckily, I have my marker there, so I know that those are my last 4 stitches. All right, so because I'm more comfortable with the yarn in my left hand, I'm switching it back up. Let me get down this row. I'm down to the last 4 stitches, and in the pattern it wants me to yarn over. So I'm going to do an increase because I won't have a decrease to couple this yarn over. I'll go ahead and slip my marker because I have it there. And then I will jump into my purl two, knit two. So I did my yarn over. Remember, I have to bring it back between my needles so that I can do my purl two and then knit two. And because I have that one extra yarn over that I just did before my marker here, that means I have increased 1 stitch. Even though I have all of these yarn overs next to the purl two togethers all the way down the row, this is what it looks like, by the way. When I have that yarn over next to a purl two together, I'm still left with 2 stitches. But down here where I just have the 1 yarn over and I don't have a purl two together with it, that means I've increased 1 stitch from what I cast on. All right, does that make sense? Pretty simple stuff. You now continue on with the border instructions, repeating rows 4 through 6. Let me go ahead and show you row 4 so that way you can see how you would work into these yarn overs and the purl two togethers. Row 8 is actually the row 4 we're going to work up here. And so we go back to our instructions for row 4, which has us begin with a knit 2. So I will start off with a knit 2 and then purl 2. Again, I have my marker there. You don't need a marker. And I'm right up now to my yarn over. That was the yarn over that caused my increase. All I want to do is knit that stitch. It looks like just a random strand of yarn up there, huh? But that's the way it's supposed to look. So I will just go into the stitch just like normal and knit it. Knit the next stitch. I'm up to a yarn over again. I just knit it. Knit the next stitch. Here's my yarn over. I simply knit it. And I would do that all the way down the row to the last 4 stitches where the pattern changes up, where I have my marker. And I will finish off with a purl two, knit two. You can see here, I'm just treating those yarn overs as if they are a stitch because that's what they are. When I get to my last 4 stitches, I can slip my marker and I go to a purl two and a knit two because this is row 4. See how that works? So what you're left with is a row of eyelets all the way down, okay? And then I would continue on, do rows 5 and 6, and then I would knit 3 rows. So I work the border through row 13, and that will give us a really nice looking border. Let me show you what it looks like on the sample. We've done this garter stitch down here at the edge. I can even bring this over so you can see. We've done the garter stitch down here at the edge. We've done some stockinette stitch, 3 rows of stockinette. So rows 4, 5, and 6 are stockinette. The same right here. Row 7 is the eyelet row. Here's your eyelet row. Then you do rows 4, 5, and 6 again, and that gives you some stockinette on top of your eyelet. And then you will knit for 3 rows, giving you this nice garter stitch. Once you finish the border, it's then time to jump into the lace stitch pattern for the body of your vest. The lace stitch pattern for the body of the vest is actually really quite simple. You work in sections of lace and then it's separated by a garter stitch, a section of lace and then some garter stitch, so on and so forth. It's pretty relaxing in the sense that you get a break from doing the lace stitches all the time by those couple rows of garter stitch. As we're working the lace stitch pattern, it's important to remember that every time we're working with our pattern stitches, we will have a yarn over on either side of a double decrease. You can see this row here that brings all those stitches together. That will be our double decrease. So every time we have a yarn over, we'll have 2 and then a double decrease. And that'll make sure to keep track of the same number of stitches along the row, even though we're doing yarn overs and a decrease, okay? So let's learn how to do the lace stitch pattern now, and you'll be on your way to get this vest going all the way up to the armholes, and then we can talk about what's next. Once we have finished with the border instructions through row 13, we then move on to the next page and we're going to work the body. You'll see that the body has us work rows 1 through either 108 all the way up to 126 depending on the size you're making. And then it says work rows 1 through 18 of lace pattern 6 or 7 times, again depending on the size you're making. What you will then do is either go back to the first page and go to this section right here. This is the lace pattern we're going to be following. Or if you prefer to use charts, there's also a chart provided of the lace instructions, whatever you choose to do. Just like any sort of instructions, I do want to point out that as you're working along the row, when you come to the part where you see that star, that asterisk, that is your signal that this is going to be your stitch pattern repeat. From the asterisk to where it has the semicolon and it says repeat from star to the last 4 stitches or whatever it may be throughout here. As you're looking at a chart, I don't know how well you can see it on this chart with the video, but there is a solid red line around the stitch pattern on the chart. That solid red line is essentially like, okay, on row 1, I'm working across, and when I get to this red line, that's where it would be the star in my written instructions. So this entire section here is my stitch pattern repeat. Here is the border section that I have finished. So I've worked through rows 1 through 13 and I'm ready to jump into the lace stitch pattern. You'll notice I have removed my stitch markers, and that's because I'm going to show you where to place stitch markers should you choose to add them along the body of your pattern. So let's go ahead and jump in with row 1. Row 1 has us begin on a right side, so you want to make sure you're on the right side of your fabric. You can tell it's the right side because you're looking at stockinette stitch on the fabric of the on the side you're getting ready to work into. So as I place this in my left hand, I'm looking at stockinette stitch, so I know I'm on the right side, and I'm ready to begin with row 1 of the lace stitch pattern. Row 1 has us begin with a knit 2, so I'm going to start off with knit 2 stitches. Knit 1, knit 2. Then I go into purl 2, and then I knit 1. Now that gives me 5 stitches here, but I'm going to go ahead and put my marker right here after those 5 stitches because now I'm jumping into my lace stitch pattern repeat, and I don't want to confuse my lace stitch pattern repeat with the edge here, okay? So on this side, I'm going to have 5 stitches. In the pattern, this is where the star is. In the chart, this is where we have the solid red line. So I start off with a yarn over. My yarn's in back, bring it between my needles to the front, over top of my right hand needle back to the back, and I will stop there because the next stitch is a knit 3, so I need my yarn in back in order to do my knit. You'll notice I hold my yarn over so it doesn't go anywhere. So I knit 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to do a double decrease, and this is an SK2P. I slip a stitch as if to knit. Now I'm going to go ahead and knit 2 stitches together. I will then take that stitch that I slipped and have it jump up and over that stitch of the knit 2 togethers. So I've just decreased 2 stitches. That means that I'm down 1 stitch so far in my row count because I only have 1 yarn over so far. But as we continue on, we're going to get that second yarn over. So the next part of the instructions say to knit 3, yarn over my needle, and then knit 1. I've reached that part where I'm at the semicolon, so this is the end of a stitch pattern repeat. I'm going to grab a marker and put my marker right there. So I know that from this marker to this marker, I have 10 stitches, and I will always have 10 stitches there after I complete the row. If at any point I have less than 10 or more than 10, I know that I have messed up in this section of stitches. That's one of the reasons I love using stitch markers, especially when I'm doing lace, because I can really compartmentalize essentially the stitch pattern repeat along the way. And I know if there is a mess up, it's in a particular section that's already sectioned off because I can count the stitches. Make sense? If you don't want to use stitch markers, you absolutely don't have to, but this makes it so much easier, especially for those of you who are not familiar with lace stitches. So once you have your marker in place, or once you have finished your repeat, it's time to repeat again. So we begin with our yarn over, then we knit 3. We do our decrease, so I slip 1 as if to knit, knit 2 together, and then have that slip stitch jump up and over the knit 2 together. Then I knit 3, yarn over, and then knit 1. That is a full repeat. So I could take a marker and then place it on my needle, and I have another section of 10 stitches that is my lace stitch pattern repeat. I would repeat that repeat all the way down the row to the last 4 stitches. Coincidentally, that's where I am right now. When you get to the last 4 stitches, you finish off this row with a purl 2 and a knit 2. So as we take a look here, it doesn't look like much is going on, okay? It's really hard to see that we've done anything yet. The yarn overs and the decreases really don't start to show up until the next couple rows. But if you can see that you have at least 1 yarn over, a decrease, and another yarn over between your markers, you know that you have everything done correctly so far. Now that we have finished row 1 of your lace pattern, let's jump into row 2. We would turn our work, and in order to keep those stitch markers out of the way, here's what I do. I always make the stitch markers face me, so it's always on the side that is facing me. And then as I move along, I just make sure that my yarn is out of the way. So we start off here with a purl 2. So I will purl 2 and then knit 2. And I'm to my marker. So you notice my yarn is in back, I slip my marker, and then I go into the next part of my instructions, which are to purl all the way down the row to the last 4 stitches. So I bring my yarn back to the front, and then I just purl. When I come up to a yarn over, I just treat it as if it's a stitch and purl into it. It's really that easy. And even though those stitch markers are in play dividing up my stitch pattern repeat, I'm just going to ignore them on this side on this row because there's nothing special I'm going to do. I'm to my marker. I want to make sure I move my yarn to the back, slip my marker, bring my yarn back forward, and continue to purl. That's how you can ensure you're not going to accidentally get your marker up into your work. as you come up to the last 4 stitches, you have to remember that your marker down here at this end is marking 5 stitches. So we would slip our marker, we would purl that first stitch, because we've been purling all along, and now we're to our 4 stitches, where we would finish off with our knit 2 and our purl 2. Okay? So there's that. That's what it looks like on this side, but the magic really shows up on the opposite side. When you even this all out, you can see that those yarn overs are really starting to show up now. Okay, they're really coming clear, and our decrease right here and right here will start to pop a little bit more as we carry on. Let's go ahead and move on to row 3. As we begin row 3, we start off with a purl 2. So our initial 4 stitches are switching up here. This is where we're getting that double moss stitch, so we're switching them up. And then we go into our knit 1, slip our marker, and we're to our repeat. Our repeat for this section is knit 1, yarn over, knit 2, work our decrease, so we slip 1 as if to knit, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, then we knit 2, yarn over, and knit 2. At the end of our repeat, I can slip my marker, and I'm ready to do my repeat again. I start off with a knit 1, yarn over, knit 2, work my decrease, knit 2, yarn over, and knit 2. Slip my marker, and I would carry on with my stitch pattern, but I'm to my last 4 stitches, so I finish off with a knit 2 and then purl 2. Notice there were no special stitches going on this row. We've already learned all the stitches we need to know in order to complete this lace section. It's just a matter of where we put those yarn overs and how many stitches are separating the yarn overs from that center decrease that we're doing. Let's go ahead and move on to row 4. As I turn my work and I get ready to begin row 4, again, I like to make sure all my stitch markers are facing me no matter what. And we start off row 4 with our knit 2, and then it immediately says to purl to the last 2 stitches. So all of the rest of these stitches are going to be purled until the last 2, and we'll end with knit 2. Nothing new. You know how to do all of this. So let's go ahead and get our purl on. Just purl all the way down the row. When you get to the last 2 stitches, don't forget to knit those 2, and you are done with row 4. We turn our work. We are on row 5, so we're going to do a little eyelet row again. And notice that the only time we're doing any of the lace stitches is when we're on the right side. When we're on the wrong side, we're just working those purl stitches across, and that's in order to keep all of these stitches right here in the lace section in stockinette stitch. Okay, so we will carry on. We're on row 5. We start off with a knit 2, split my yarn there, there we go, and then a purl 2, and then a knit 1. I'm going to slip my marker, and I'm ready to begin my stitch pattern repeat. So I knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, work my decrease, slip 1 as if to knit, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, then I go ahead, I knit 1, yarn over, and then knit 3. And I'm to my marker. So that's my signal that, all right, cool, I should be at the end of my repeat. I am, and I still have my 10 stitches between this marker and this marker. You see how helpful those markers are? Let's go ahead. We would work our repeat once again because I have 2 repeats in this little swatch. So I start off with a knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, the slip, knit 2 together, pass slip stitch over, decrease, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3. To my marker, that's the end of my stitch pattern repeat. Perfect. I'm to my last 4 stitches, and I end with a purl 2 and a knit 2, and that again is shifting up my stitches out here, so it gives me that double moss stitch pattern. And you can really begin to see how the lace stitches are starting to take shape here. See how the eyelets are all coming in and creating this nice triangle, and we have these center decreases going up there. We will go ahead and turn our work and follow along with the instructions for row 6, which has us begin with a purl 2 and then knit 2, and then I'm going to purl across to the last 4 stitches. To my last 4 stitches, and I finish this row up with a knit 2 and a purl 2. Pretty cool. We're on our way. We are on row 7. So I turn my work, take a look at it. It's so fun to turn your work and really take a look at the stitches as you're creating them, especially when you're working lace stitches, because it really gives a really neat look. Man, I just love that. All right, let's go ahead and do row 7. Row 7 has us begin with a purl 2. So we are changing up our stitches again over here along the edge. And then we have a knit 3, so 1, 2, 3, slip our marker, and away we go with our stitch pattern. We're going to knit 3, yarn over, work our decrease, same decrease we've been working with all along, yarn over, and then knit 4. Pretty easy, right? To our marker, I can slip my marker. It's the end of my repeat. Perfect. And I carry on. I knit 3, yarn over, work my decrease, yarn over, knit 4. Slip my marker, finish off this row with a knit 2 and a purl 2. Pretty cool. Oh, look how pretty that is getting. All right, so I'm going to turn my work. We'll jump into row 8, which is really simple because we're going to start off with a knit 2, end with a knit 2, and purl everything in between. Finish off with my knit 2, and voila, I can turn my work here. Let's take a peek at what we've got. Wow, I mean, what a transformation. I'm actually going to move my markers back so you can better see. Look at that transformation from just a clump of stitches, and you're really starting now to get this really great lace stitch look. Isn't that neat? We have worked through half of the lace stitch pattern. The remainder of the pattern is a repeat of what we've already done. We have worked through rows 1 through 8 of the lace stitch pattern, and now what we will do is repeat rows 1 through 7 right on top of this. After we do that, we'll have a double set of this lace section, and then we will do 3 rows of garter stitch, which is just knitting every row. So that will give us this section of lace like we talked about when I showed this to you. So this is sections 1 through 8, or rows 1 through 8. This is rows 1 through 7 again, and then here are the 3 rows of just knitting. You see what I mean about getting these sections here? It's really not that difficult. You already know all of the stitches you need to know to complete this lace stitch pattern. It's not hard at all. And one of the great things is that if you decide to use the Roll With It tweed yarn, it has a natural ombre effect to the yarn. So as you're working each section, it will look subtly different than the last. I mean, look at the sample here. You can see it goes from sort of a really lighter blue to a darker blue to a light blue to a dark blue. Like, it has this really great variation. So as you're using this yarn, you're going to be excited to see what each section looks like as you come to it. So it's going to make it for a fast, enjoyable knit all the way up to the armhole. Because remember, this is the full body of the sweater that you're knitting up to the armhole. Then we have to separate the front and the back of the sweater and complete the sections from that on out. So that's where we are now. Let's go ahead and move on to the front and the back. We're going to continue working on my little swatch right here, but obviously I don't have the same number of stitches as you would need to actually put stitches on a holder. So let's talk through how you would go about doing this. In the instructions, you'll notice that you are going to work on the right front of the sweater first. But in order to do that, you would have to put the back of the sweater and the left front of the sweater on a holder. So that way you could only work this section of the sweater. We're imagining this was the whole back of the sweater. So what you would do here is on row 1, you would follow the instructions for your stitch pattern repeat for the number of times as indicated. Once you've reached that number, you then would move the next number of stitches as indicated to a holder for the back, and then do the next set of numbers on a holder for the left front. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to work a stitch pattern across to this marker. And then we're going to simulate putting these stitches on a holder so that way you can see how it's done, all right? Obviously, you would have to follow along with the instructions as they're written for your size, but this gives you a pretty good idea of how this would work up, okay? So I'm going to follow along as closely as I can. Let's pick up our work, and this would be a row 1 of the right front. I'm going to move this up, follow along with your instructions as well so that you can see what we're doing. We start off with a knit 2, and then purl 2, knit 1, I'm to my marker so I can slip my marker, and then I yarn over, knit 3, work my decrease. It's the same lace pattern, guys. We're just going to break it up a little bit here. So I did my decrease. I'm going to knit 3, yarn over, and then knit 1. Once you've completed that stitch pattern repeat between your markers like that, you'll notice in the instructions that it says you're supposed to repeat all of that 4, 5, 6, or 7 times, okay? Once you've repeated that, the total number of times you need to do, you then would go ahead, and this would be your marker because you would have your marker there, right? And then you would go ahead and you would purl 2, so purl 1, purl 2, and then knit 1, and then knit 2 together. What you will do now is you will go back and all of the stitches that you have just done for the right front, count them. Make sure you have the same number of stitches on your needle as indicated in the pattern, okay? Because now you're going to work just back and forth on this number of stitches. All these other stitches that you have, you'll have a lot more than I do, you're going to put those on a holder. And that's really super easy. You're going to grab that scrap yarn that I told you to get and your tapestry needle. So grab my tapestry needle. I'm going to grab this scrap yarn real quick. And what we will do, let me grab my scissors. Grab the scrap yarn, make sure it's long enough to go the length of the stitches that you're going to place on it. And using your tapestry needle, you're going to thread that tapestry needle through the stitches that you're going to place on a holder. So you'll have the first set of stitches written in the instructions. You'll place those on a holder just like this, okay? I like to tie my holder once it's all done so that way I don't accidentally grab it and pull it out. But that first section that you put on a holder, that's the back. That's going to be the back of your vest. The next section you put on the holder, so you'd get a new length of yarn and put it on a holder, that's the left front of your vest. So once you are done with the right front of your vest, you will then go and work the left front of your vest. You'll put all of those stitches back on a needle and work those, that left front. And then you'll go back and you'll work the back of your vest. Okay, so you're going to work these pieces in sections. That's why you need to put those on a holder. It's really not that hard. And if you follow along with the instructions, with everything I've told you to do thus far, you'll be able to put these back on a needle and then pick up in the stitch pattern as indicated in the pattern. Okay, so it will tell you how to pick up in the pattern. The biggest thing is, when you put them back on the needle and you begin working the stitch pattern again, you want to make sure that your lace panel is still lining up. Make sure it's not off center by any means. And let me show you what I mean by that. So on the vest itself here, so here is the full body of the vest. And it's at this point of the armholes that it's getting separated. So the vest was worked all the way up to the armholes. It worked across the right front. That's this part right here. Okay, so it worked across the right front. Then you put all of these stitches on a holder. So I'm going to hold them all, okay? So I put all of these stitches on a holder for the back. Okay, so all of those stitches would be on a holder for the back, right down here. And then I would put all of these stitches right here from this point to this point on a holder for the left front. Okay, so those are just going to hang out. I would finish this, but my big thing here is see how my lace stitches down here on the body, as they start working up the right front, I want to make sure they are still in alignment. Then once the right front is done and I put these stitches back on a needle to work on them, I want to make sure my lace stitches are still in an alignment working along here as well. Same thing over here. When these get put on the needle again, you want to make sure your lace stitches are still in alignment. The way the instructions are written, you will have no problem making sure all of the stitches are in alignment as long as you have followed the instructions correctly. You really should not have any problem. That's why I wanted to make sure I mentioned it was very important you counted your stitches to make sure you have the correct number of stitches so that way nothing gets off track. One thing that's really cool, let's take a look at the sample again. As you're working the right front, not only are you continuing this edge right over here, okay, so that's our side edge, but you're also beginning to create a nice edge along the armhole. So you will begin doing this armhole stitch right here. And so all you'll have to do there is just move your marker over to make sure your armhole has this nice stitch pattern and it matches up with the outside edging also. But that makes it so that way your armhole, when you're wearing your sweater vest, it doesn't roll in because of the stockinette lace. Pretty cool, right? It's cool how Lisa Gentry designed it like that. It makes it very easy to make a vest without a whole lot of extra instructions. It's pretty straightforward. Once all of these sections are complete, you then would, the top right up here, you're going to seam the top shoulder. All right, so this is the top of the right front, this is the top of the back, and you'll seam the shoulder together. And then once that's done, your entire sweater vest is complete. You'll just have to weave in any ends you might have. It's pretty darn simple, okay? Hopefully that makes sense on how you would divide up your fronts from the back. And once you have everything divided off, you would then carry on with just the right front, following the lace stitch pattern as it is established. So one thing you can notice here is, notice that I did my full lace stitch pattern, okay? And then if I had repeated that however many times it's indicated in the pattern, and then I finished off with my purl 2 and then knit 1 and my knit 2 together. So I'm left with 4 stitches outside of this marker, just like I was before. So as I carry on with my lace stitch pattern, I'm following along just where I left off. It's really not that big of a deal. So let's go ahead. If we were carrying on, notice I have some stitches right here that would represent my back. These stitches right here would represent the left front, so I would just ignore them at this point. I would turn my work and I would carry on following the pattern from this point forward. So what we just did would have been row 1 of the lace stitch pattern, so I could carry on with row 2 of the lace stitch pattern. Let me turn my instructions, that way I make sure I'm in the right part here. So we start off with purl 2, and then knit 2, slip my marker, and then I will purl to the last 4 stitches. Remember that I do have 5 stitches on this other side, so my last 4 stitches will be on the other side of that first stitch marker. Okay, I'm going to slip that, purl 1, and then now I finish off with my knit 2 and then my purl 2. See how I'm just right back into my lace stitch pattern, turn my work, and this part will go really fast because you don't have the full body of the vest. You're just working on one front, okay? For the right front, you would carry on in the lace stitch pattern through row 48. Once you get past row 48, the next 5 rows are shaping the shoulders. There's nothing new there for me to show you as far as any special stitch. Just follow along with the instructions, doing the decreases as indicated, so that way you are shaping your shoulders. Once the shoulders are shaped, you finish off by binding off. And I'm assuming you know how to bind off because this is an intermediate pattern, okay? Just make sure you don't bind off too tight, but I wouldn't do a stretchy bind off. I just do a nice relaxed bind off, a regular bind off, okay? Once those stitches are bound off, you then have to go to the left front and put those stitches back on your needle. I'm going to show you how to do that now. Okay, so we are imagining here that this is the full back of the sweater and that you did the right front, we've done our garter stitch, and we've bound off, okay? What you would do now is you would take your needles and you would go to the left front, which would obviously be a lot larger. It would actually look like this, okay? And so here's your stitches on holders. Coming from the left side towards the right, you simply take your needle and you just put it into those stitches that are resting on your holder, okay? Make sure you don't miss any of the yarn overs you might have or what have you, okay? So you'll have more stitches than this, obviously, but this is all you'll do. Once you get those all on your needle, you then would follow along with the left front instructions, starting with row 1. So row 1 would start you off with a knit 2 together, knit 1, purl 2. Coincidentally, that's just mirrors what we did over here, right? So it mirrors what we did over there. You would grab your yarn. So you would grab the yarn and you would reattach it. So you have a new ball of yarn or continuing a ball of yarn, and you simply just start working your knit stitches. So this first one, what is it? It's a knit 2 together. So you would start off with your knit 2 together. You'd yarn over with your new yarn, pop out and off, and then you would do your knit 1, and then you would carry on in the pattern, so the purl 2, so on and so forth. But see how your yarn is attached? You've picked up right where you left off in the stitch pattern, and Bob's your uncle, so on and so forth. All right, so you would make this just a mirror image of what your right front looks like. Once it's all done, then I'm going to take that out. So we're going to imagine that the left front and the right front is all done. All you have left is the back. So once again, with the right side facing you and your needle coming from the left towards the right, you want to make sure you just put all of those stitches right on your needle, all the way across. Make sure you get any yarn over you might have had on the holder. And I don't take my holder off until I've done a couple rows, just to make sure that I haven't dropped any stitches on accident. But you would just carry on just like before. You'd follow the instructions for the back. It's really that easy. So then once the tops of the front and the two fronts and the back are done, you would seam those together just like I showed you. I'll show you once again. So the top of the sweater, this is the top of the sweater. You seam the bind off edge up here at the top of the front to the bind off edge of the back. You'll have an opening for the neck, and then you'll do the same for the left front. And your sweater will be done. Let me hold it up for you here. You can see the sweater. Here's the back. It's a continuous, beautiful lace stitch pattern. And the beautiful thing about this particular pattern that Lisa Gentry did is that there's no extra finishing. Once you're done, you're done. You weave in your ends and that's it. So with this beautiful yarn and the color changes, you don't have any extra yarn to weave in other than if you happen to come across a knot or if you needed to add a new ball of yarn, which you should always do at the end of the row, by the way. You guys who followed along with my videos know that I have always suggested that. But that's it, you guys. That's all you really need to know to complete this really great going coastal vest. I hope you've enjoyed this video. You learned something new, and I hope that you will give this lace stitch a try. It is really simple, and it really gives a great impact with the new Roll With It Tweed yarn by Red Heart. This comes in a lot of really great colors, so if you don't want to go with this really awesome sort of seafoam color here, what is this called? It's called Marine. Or if you want to go with the sample color, which is this beautiful blue color, there's a lot of other options for you to check out. I'm Marley Bird. This is the Marley Bird YouTube channel. You can find more videos just like this one, making you a better crocheter or knitter, right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the channel. If you want more videos just like that one, check out some of these other videos that I've already handpicked for you. And don't forget to hit subscribe so that way you're up to date whenever I release a new video. And don't forget, smash that like button, as my kids say. Bye, guys.